think we can get started. We're talking today about going global. My name's Aimee Liu, and my guest is Juli Min. And she's coming from Shanghai. I'm in Venice, California. We're in two different days. I'm in Thursday and you're in Friday, so this is all part of the discussion of going global. And um, so let's see. I want to start by welcoming everybody and introducing Juli. I'd like to just introduce you to our live audience by reading straight off your website. Um, Juli Min is a Korean American writer based in Shanghai. You hold an MFA in fiction from Warren Wilson, and you studied Russian and comparative literature at Harvard. Your novel Shanghailanders was published in May of last year by Spiegel and Grau in the US and simultaneously by Dialogue Books in the UK, which is something I want to talk about. Translations have been acquired in Arabic, German, Japanese, Norwegian, and Spanish. Shanghailanders itself tells the story of a Chinese family that travels the world with roots in Japan and Paris as well, of course, as Shanghai. It is such a fascinating novel, as we discussed in our print interview for MFA Lore last month. And your journey with this book sort of epitomizes the international publishing experience, which is our topic today. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I wanted to start by asking you to take us where you were when you finished the manuscript. How did you decide, being in Shanghai, having gotten your MFA in the States, having written a book that was set all over the world, how did you decide where to go first? Did you already have an agent at that point, or were you looking for U.S. agents at the time?
Yes, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much, Aimee, for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure interacting with you for the print interview and then today. And you have an incredible community. I really admire your work that you do, helping everyone understand more about publishing. So thank you so much for having me. Yes, I first finished the book through my MFA, and I was living in Shanghai. My son was turning 1, I think like 3 months after my MFA finished. And I remember that I had no agent. I just had a kind of rough manuscript for my thesis. And I remember thinking that um, I kind of set this arbitrary deadline for his first birthday in order to get an agent. And so that meant I graduated in the summer, and I just gave myself like 3-4 months to try to get an agent. And I I did that for a couple of reasons. One was that um, I had actually been previously agented before. So when I was a little bit younger, like in my early 20s, I had written a memoir about like being a K-pop trainee in Korea. And yeah, and I had agented with that book, and it actually died on submission, so it didn't work out, that one. But I had been agented, and so I knew what it took to query and look for an agent. And I felt like, my son still not walking, and and it not being the busiest time of parenting yet, I I just wanted to push myself to try to kind of gain momentum, to keep the momentum of the MFA moving post graduation. So I targeted US agents, mostly in New York, but I think I also queried a couple in London. And I basically made a huge spreadsheet, a list of different agents that I thought might like my book. And I told myself that I would query at least one agent every day. And giving myself like 3, 4 months, I thought that I would be able, I might query up to 100 agents. So I did have a lot of agents on a big list. And I found those agents through Publishers Marketplace. And because I had been agented and it didn't work out the first time, what I really wanted this time around, not to say that anything was bad about that relationship, but what I really focused on was um, numbers and sales records of agents for literary fiction.
How'd you get that information?
Yeah, so I really just used Publishers Marketplace. I got a subscription and I just filtered because that website has public listings of every single literary agent and all of their sales history. And you can kind of filter by the biggest dollar amount sales. You can filter by the highest number of sales, so the one who moves the most books. And you can filter by category, so literary fiction or romance, romantasy, I'm sure is there now. And so I just filtered for agents who had more sales in the past year, so were active, made decently sized sales, and focused on literary fiction. And so I just started cold querying. I didn't have any contacts, and so just cold querying again, and trying to do at least one and sometimes two, sometimes three a day if I could. Researching them and then sending out my query, and then just slowly, if people came back, sending out the manuscript. And I think I signed with my agent. I think I started the whole kind of rigmarole, the beauty, they call it the beauty contest.
Yeah.
Where you choose your agent. So I started that in October.
So how long did it take for them to get back to you? And was the global issue something that you looked at? I mean, did you look at foreign sales or the types of books that they published in relationship to yours?
That would have been really smart, Aimee. I didn't. I guess coming from the US and studying in an American MFA, I didn't think too much really about global sales or translations. I didn't know much about it going into publishing because I'd never been traditionally published, and it was always my dream to be published in the US. And so I didn't know much before this whole experience of the past 3 years, but I didn't really look at foreign sales or global sales or foreign translations. But it is all there in Publishers Marketplace.
And how long did it take for you to start hearing back from agents? Because for some people, it's like a year or never. Did you have to wait that long?
Yeah, I think I waited like 1.5. I think it was about 1.5, 1 to 1.5 months, something like that. I started in, I think I started in earnest in September, and then I had a bite in October.
And I take it you didn't go with the first bite.
I didn't, but I seriously considered her because I really did like her, and I did like a few different options, but in the end, the agent that I chose kind of stood out from the rest. And in part, it was because she had connected me to a couple of her like represented artists, writers who said just like incredible things about her. So it was really the reference check that pushed me over.
So who is your agent?
My agent is Stephanie Dalman at Trellis. Yeah, Trellis Literary. They're in Brooklyn.
Okay. Great. And so everybody always wants to know about this whole process. So let's stay with it for a minute. So you got your first bite and you thought about that agent. Then who else came in and did they all come at once? And did you do that thing of getting back to the other agents and saying, I've got somebody who's interested. I need an answer from you. I mean, did you play that whole game or how
Yes,
did you have, I
definitely.
assume you had a hierarchy of people that you were really interested in at the top of your list.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's etiquette to stop querying new agents once someone expresses interest. So I did stop kind of sending out queries to new people once there was signs of interest, because I think that's just the right thing to do. And I also had a lot of, I had a fair number of queries out already. I think like, more than 30 or so. So I had already sent out a bunch. And once someone expressed interest, wanted to see the manuscript and wanted to set up a meeting, I did let everyone else know who was who I had previously queried. And some actually, many of them, unless they outright rejected me, many of them do want to see the manuscript because there's nothing really for them to lose. So I did send out my manuscript to, I think, a good majority of them. And then from there, there's always a little filtering out and say, oh, not for me. And then there's always uh, a good number who say, oh, send the full manuscript. And then once you give them a couple of weeks to read, then it just becomes a matter of scheduling meetings and waking up
It
at 2 a.m.
In Shanghai, I can imagine
Yeah.
that time difference was a real bear. But it's such a luxury to have that much interest, and it sounds like you did a fantastic job. How many people, when it came down to you, and you were back in the driver's seat, and you had your choice, how many agents did you have to choose from?
Yeah, I was so incredibly lucky and floored to have 11 offers in the end.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, I credit that to like, I did query a lot. So, when you query like tens of agents, and you have a lot out there, you could potentially have more interest. And I tried to work fast because I did know that once I did get some interest, I would stop. Um, and so I do always recommend that if you are trying to get more queries out there, to kind of front load it. Some people always say, oh, I'm going to go in waves, or I'm going to do like five first. And I always suggest that you kind of like front load the number of queries to more
Mhm.
agents, because once you do get interest, you shouldn't really keep querying more
Yeah.
while someone is trying to court you. It's not really nice. So I I did have 11, and it was um it was so surprising because my novel, as you know, it's not the most like conventionally structured. It moves backwards, and each chapter is narrated by, it's a roving POV, chapter by chapter. Um,
Also, they're
and
not American characters,
and they're not
which
American characters. Yeah, it's like a full Asian cast almost.
yes.
Like there are a couple of there are a couple of non-Asian characters in the background or supporting characters, but it's like, it's like Crazy Rich Asians, like full full
So
cast.
did everybody love that, or did some people hesitate about that?
I never got any comments about that.
Wow.
I did get some comments like, "Oh, we want more from one character or the other," or a lot of people felt like the first chapter of my book was kind of challenging because it's a roving it's a roving POV within one chapter and within the first chapter, and some of those characters never come up again, and so
Mhm.
some people felt like that would just be sometimes people want a book that's like really easy to sink your teeth into in the beginning. And my I think my book, I guess from a commercial perspective because it requires that extra work from the reader to follow more characters initially. Some people felt it might be a bit challenging for a reader, you
Also,
know.
it's a little bit in the future. So
Yes,
there's
in
a
the
little
future.
bit of that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet then it moves into the past. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And one thing I did like about my agent was that she did express the fact that it was a challenging book to read, or you know, but that she totally understood my reasoning, my thematic reasoning. I mean, she studied writing and she studied creative writing, and she's a very literary like reader and writer, and so I felt really seen and understood by her, and I feel like that was important.
Did the did the global setting of the book and the movement around the world and the base in Shanghai, did agents see that as a selling point, or did it come up at all?
I think probably they did. The working title for my yeah, I think to to show that, I think we can talk about how the title came about. I had always used Shanghailanders as the working title of my draft. You know, like a kind of a nod to Dubliners, and
Mhm.
I always liked that funny word Shanghailanders, which is like a historical term that
Mhm.
the British expats used in the 1920s and 30s. But
Yeah, because it was usually applied to non-Asians,
yes,
which
yes. So
was
I wanted to
yeah,
kind of like take that back in a way.
yeah.
But but actually, when I queried the novel, I actually had changed the title, and I think it was partly because I was worried that it was too Asian.
Mhm.
You know, I think it was, even though it had been always my working title, I think I did have that fear of, and I'm you know, maybe I'm not proud to say it, but I think I did have that fear of, is it too like pigeonholed as a Asian
Mhm.
book or something if Shanghai is in the title, and for an American audience, and I did change the title to a kind of like abstract, more literary term. Um, and later, when we went to submit the book to editors, when we went to sell the book, I remember Trellis, my agency, um, th- we were having some trouble because not I didn't love that the new title that I had selected, and and they asked if it would be okay if they kind of did a query, like a survey within the
Mhm.
agency.
Mhm.
Um, and they did a query, they did a survey, and it was unanimous. Everyone thought Shanghailanders was the most evocative title. And these are agents, so they're always thinking about what's sellable, what's
Mhm.
interesting, what's kind of appetizing to a reader. And I thought, wow, like I guess Shanghai is maybe a selling point. Maybe I shouldn't shy away from the truth of this novel, which is that it's set in Shanghai and that it's a book that is in many ways about the city. And
Right.
yeah, I
And
mean, I
then the
also, yeah, sorry, please.
No, that's okay. I just wanna say that then the irony is that you had a double release in the US and the UK, of course, not in Shanghai, not in China. So, alright, so let's move on to when they sent the book out. And they sent it out not only to American publishers, but also at the same time to UK, or how did that all come about? Because it's very rare that a book is simultaneously released in I guess maybe it's happening more than it used to, but it used to be extremely rare that a book was released, in two different, territories at once.
I think that my agency actually specializes in um I mean, they don't specialize, but they have someone that is dedicated to selling foreign rights. So they have an in-house foreign rights team, and they've Um, I think they've done a very good job, across their titles of selling foreign rights. Actually, the first offer that came in for the book was the Japanese translation, and that came in even a couple days before the American offers started to come in, which was
Really?
so interesting. I remember there was the date that we were supposed to go out, and I had just imagined that we would be going out to US editors because that's what my agent and I had planned for. She made a list of US editors. And then I went on vacation with my family, and I remember I guess a few days in, she she messaged and she called me to let me know that there was a Japanese offer. And I was so confused because I didn't even realize that that was on the table. And she said, "Yes, we have our foreign rights agent, and we have our, gosh, what are they called? Book scouts. So
Hmm.
the agency has book scouts who are like intermediaries who work between languages, who represent agented books on submission to different foreign publishers. These are people who speak multiple languages and understand different book markets and then can speak to publishers in foreign countries to let them know that, hey, this book is kind of interesting. Why don't you take a preliminary look at it? So those are book scouts. I didn't even know this job existed. And um, I probably would have wanted to do this job if I had known that it existed in college. But yeah, so my agent told me that their book scout had made preliminary moves with a couple of Japanese publishers. And because there was because there was interest, there was already an offer, and they were sure that they wanted it even before a US offer came in. Um, which is, I think, unusual because the US offers are usually like the biggest, and the US offers usually come in first. And then foreign publishers will often wait to see how big that deal is, or
Hmm.
how excited different publishers in the US are about that book to kind of gauge how successful that book might be, or um, how much interest it might garner from their local market, and how kind of fast they need to act. And so, because it's usually this kind of like waterfall effect, like first the big US deal, and then maybe the UK will see what they want to offer based on that deal, how much was spent, and then foreign rights will, for other foreign countries, may also kind of see what the size of different deals are and what other languages pick up. It's often like kind of, I mean, don't quote me. I'm not sure because I don't do foreign rights, but it seems to me like it's a little bit of a kind of like a watching game, everyone's watching each other and
Hmm.
seeing what the deal is. Um, and so, my characters are half Japanese. My characters are half Japanese or ethnically Japanese. And there's even chapters set in Japan. And for me, the fact that a Japanese publisher had faith in my book it was almost more meaningful than
Hmm.
the US offers that came in. I mean, obviously those were incredible, but to have that kind of validation in a way from
You're not part
yeah,
Japanese, are you?
I'm not,
So,
I'm not.
so yeah, so that yeah, it was verifying that you got it right. I mean, yeah, it's a big feather in your cap, I think.
Yeah, and I was always worried about it because, I did use um, sort of like sensitivity readers. I did have people of Japanese background check the language and read the story. So I did have a certain level of confidence, but you're always worried when you're writing about
Hmm.
another identity if you got it right, and how
Yeah.
others might react. So that really meant a lot to me. Yeah, that Japanese offer.
Yeah. Oh, it's very exciting. And then you got the US publisher, and you went with Spiegel and Grau. How many offers did you have for the US publishers?
Yeah, so in the end, it was a six-way auction. I think I'm remembering that right. Yes, and Spiegel and Grau. I mean, Spiegel and Grau was the first meeting that I had. They of when we scheduled all the editorial meetings with different editors who were interested, they were the first meeting I had, and I remember talking to my agent and saying, did that seem to go really well? Because that felt really good. And I kind of I and she was like, it went so well. I don't think I could have asked for a better editorial meeting. And then we had a few more after that. But I was always feeling from the get-go very, very, very good about Spiegel and Grau. I loved the fact also that it was like it's like this woman-led team.
Mhm.
They're relatively new, a few years into their independent um, kind of iteration. And I mean, like I led an independent literary magazine for many years. So I kind of love that um, idea. I loved that idea of being with like a female led independent team, willing to kind of take chances and do what they believed in without kind of
So did
the.
it come down to an auction where the highest bidder got it, or did you have other feelings about Spiegel and Grau that kind of wove into it so that it was not necessarily just taking the most money, but also factoring other ideas?
Yeah, it was an auction, and I remember because it was obviously my first time, and I remember asking my agent, like, what happens? Like, how do I
Yeah,
decide?
because the
Or
author
what
is not
happened?
part of the agent of the
Right.
auction. You have to sit back and kind of like not know what's going on. I've been
Yeah.
part of that. It's very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and I remember asking her, like, what does it mean when someone wins the auction, or if someone is like second place or third place, what does that mean? And she said, and I remember my agent kind of told me, and these are not her words, but it's the sentiment that like in publishing, money signals interest and commitment. And so the publisher who is most committed, most excited, and is going to most likely support your book the most at publication is likely going to be the one who proposes the most amount of money. So in the end, it was Spiegel and Grau who was the highest bidder, and
Mhm.
I mean, I was so happy with that because I really loved
Yeah.
Spiegel and Grau. So it it wasn't there was no situation where I kind of felt like, oh gosh, like they won, but I don't like them. It was it all kind of made sense at the end. But
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a situation where you might have an editorial meeting, you might love an editor, and they kind of they don't win the auction, and you have to decide between many things that you don't know because it's you
Yeah.
cannot project anything in publishing. And
Sometimes it's the vision of the book, I mean, I've had that experience, but
oh yes.
it's different with nonfiction when you're working off a proposal, but sometimes you're talking to two editors and they have like, for example, in your book, somebody's going to market it as mostly to a young adult audience as opposed to a literary audience. That kind of thing would be a real problem. And sometimes in those cases, you can use the interest of the person that you really want to with,
Mhm.
and if the other person has offered more money, you can kind of play a game with that because, oh, we really want to go
Right.
with you, but you need to add a little bit more to the pot. Um, so there's that. It's very exciting though, and you're very lucky to have had an auction. It's pretty exciting when that happens. And did the same thing happen on the UK? You went with dialogue. Was that going on at the same time?
Yeah, so at the same time that my US auction was being planned, my US submission was being planned, my agency also found a co-agent for me in the UK. So the co-agent that I have is Sue Armstrong at CNW in the UK. And, basically she is in, she is in London. So she knows the UK publishing scene inside and out. And then she and my US agent kind of like split the commissions. And she arranged the submission on the UK side. And, the agents are talking and strategizing together, and there's no need to consult me because I don't know anything. And they basically decided, I guess Sue decided that it was time to go out, and she ended up getting a preempt from Dialogue. And so it preempt is like different than an auction in that a preempt is just when an editor wants to make an offer that they feel will make you stop looking at other offers. And so
A lot of money. Yeah.
so it was of course I had a meeting with Hannah, who's my editor at Dialogue, and again, like just an incredible meeting. Again, a female-led kind of like independent team at Dialogue, focused on publishing underrepresented writers around the world. And I just felt it was kind of like fate, these two teams that have a kind of similar energy and just incredibly fierce women at the helm. And I just loved the idea of being with those teams. The editors were so smart in what they said about the book and what they suggested to add or, kind of focus
Did they
on.
work with each other, the editor in the UK and the editor in the US? Did you have, all this was going on at the same time. Once the deals were cut,
Right.
did they coordinate with each other on the editorial process?
Yeah, so I think it's fairly common for the US to be the edit. If you are like an American writer and the US is the main deal, then and the first deal, I think it's very common for the writer to work solely with the US editor, and then for that version to just kind of be like, copy
Template.
paste. Yeah,
Yeah.
copy paste, like sent out to the different foreign territories. But in this case, Hannah had editorial ideas, and this was actually her first acquisition for Dialogue as the editorial director. And so she felt strongly about the book and her ideas, and she kind of made it I think it was like one of her requirements that she be involved in the editorial conversations. And even though that I think that's actually uncommon, I was very happy to do so because I loved both of their brains, and I loved the idea of getting to work with both of them. And it actually, I think it was, so there were like maybe a few more emails than usual and more people in the, CC chain. But overall, I think it was beneficial for the book. And there were times where I felt, one editor said something, I had a gut feeling like maybe I didn't want to make that change. And then we had the conversation as a threesome, like, do I really
It's like
need to
having
make
an
this change?
amazingly high-level writing group just for your book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I remember one time, like one editor was like, "I don't think you need to make that change," and then the other editor was like, "All right, fine." So, I think it works to your benefit to have multiple people instead of necessarily like always one-on-one relationship, especially as a new writer, where maybe you feel inclined to accept more. But yeah, I felt it was nice.
So how did they decide to release simultaneously? Was that in the same time slot? Because usually it's the US release and then everything comes after that at various intervals.
I'm not totally sure because that's really like a sales and I guess scheduling decision within the publisher. And They didn't tell me too much about that. But,
Hmm.
they kind of give you a date, or they give you a couple of dates and they ask you which one you like maybe. But,
Yeah.
um,
I guess one of the reasons is that because they're both in English, um, especially for the UK, they would rather come out simultaneously so that anybody in the UK is buying the UK version and they're not buying the American version off of Amazon because it's there first. So
right.
that's one thing. I wanted to back up for a minute and just give everybody an idea of foreign rights, kind of a little primer on foreign translation rights, because I think a lot of writers don't know anything about this when they're working on their manuscripts and when they're first getting published, and all they're thinking about is publishing in the US or in their home country, wherever they're starting. Um, but everybody probably knows, you typically get an advance on your book from your primary publisher. And then the foreign translation rights, which go around the world, each one of those is a separate deal with its own advance. So you can multiply the amount of money the book is earning by many times. It's one of my books had that, where I got a very nice advance, and then it was sold to about a dozen different countries, and I
Oh,
made far more money off of all of those translation rights than I
mm,
had in the advance. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I don't know, this was a while back, so I may be kind of out of date, but I think it's much more common now for agencies to sell the foreign rights, and that's one reason why it was possible for Japan to be the first bidder on yours,
that's right.
because it was the agent, the scout was connected with the agency, and there was all this buzz sort of on the sidelines. Um, there's another way to go, which turned out to be my advantage on my book, which
Mm,
was that the publisher, which was Warner Books, now it's Grand Central, but they had a foreign rights department of their own, and everybody in that department was over the moon about my book. They loved it, and that was one big reason why they ended up buying the book, and why we ended up going with them, was because
mm,
there was all of this impetus in their foreign rights department. And so that meant, because their foreign rights department was going to sell the book and they were going to get a cut for the publisher, it meant the publisher was willing to pay more for the US rights that
I
started that whole waterfall going.
see.
Um, so all of those licenses really add up, and it's something for people to think about, if whether your book has a global reach or not. It's something to think about if there's anything political in your book that would be negative. Your book was the Japanese loved it, but from what I understand, and with my experience, if you're telling a story that's historical and it's got anything about the war that's negative about Japan, then Japan is not going to want the rights to your book. So one of mine was historical, and it covered the war, and there was some historical stuff in it that wasn't very friendly to the Japanese, and we never sold the Japanese rights.
Yeah,
So those are
that's
the
interesting.
kinds of things that are worth thinking about, or at least being cognizant of. It's not going to change what you write, but it's best to think about it. So that's one thing. Now, they went on, so that then after the big release, and you had that, so then these rights have continued to pile up for you, and so these editions are continuing to come out.
Yeah. So like in your case, your publisher sold the foreign rights, and in my case, the my agency sold the foreign rights. And I think, I can't really I don't really know, like, what's the benefit of either one. I can't really
Yeah.
say which one is
Yeah.
better. I do remember when I was signing with my agency, one of their kind of talking points was that they have a foreign rights team. Um but and I'm sure that there may be some subtleties or nuances to um, maybe like a publisher's team working on behalf of the publisher versus an agent's team maybe working on behalf of the
Well,
writer
sometimes it's just
agent.
that the
So,
agency only has 2 or 3 people selling foreign rights, and they just don't have
right.
capacity compared to
That's
a
right.
big. So that's
Yeah.
a lot of it. It depends to some degree. If you're with a small boutique agency, probably you're better off having either the publisher or the boutique agent can have some another relationship with a different kind of agent that
Right.
specializes. So there's lots of ways to go, but
Yeah.
yeah. Have you received the editions yet? Well, obviously your UK edition, but
Yeah, so I have like, I have the UK edition here. This is the paperback. The other editions I have I haven't asked them to be sent to my address in China because it's very difficult for me to receive sometimes
uh,
mail and packages, especially packages of books to to here.
yeah,
I've had like an entire box confiscated because they were worried that I was going to sell them. I had to like sign a bunch of forms
no.
saying that no, these are my author copies.
Uh,
Um, so yeah, I do get copies of all my foreign editions and they're just sitting in my mom's
It's pretty
in my
weird
mom's
when
house.
I have Finnish editions and
Yeah.
Dutch
Oh God,
editions and
so
things like that. It's
cool.
very you look it's very cool, but they'll send you like a box of these books. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody who speaks or reads Finnish or Dutch, so unfortunately they're all sitting out in a shed outside, probably moldering. So which is a little
Oh
sad,
God.
but
Yeah. I mean
um
those are so special though. Do they all have different
yeah.
covers and
Oh,
and
they're all
different
very
ideas
different
too?
covers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
very
fascinating.
different sensibilities in each culture. Yeah, it's very
Yeah, that's cool
strange.
to see.
Yeah. So have you let's move on to the global aspect of promoting it. I assume all of this was done virtually. Did you have to travel for any of these deals or did you go back to the US or did you have you met any of these people in person?
Yeah, so I did eventually travel to meet some of these people, and then I did later on when the book was published go on book tour, and I can talk about like which parts I financed versus the publisher's financed. I'm happy to talk about that. But um, yeah, basically I did all of the sales items virtually. So signing with my agent, and then selling the book, and then selling the foreign versions were all virtual. Um, After I sold Gosh, I think it was in January when everything happened, and then I happened to be making a trip to the US, um, around I forget which time, and then, it coincided with the London Book Fair, where my foreign rights agent would be going to London to attend the book fair, and they were kind of, like, trying to push my book, and then I had already signed with my Spanish publisher, and I had already signed obviously with my Japanese publisher. And so, and I think maybe they were talking to some German publishers at that point, but um I I was I was very happy to like make a stop um in London while I was around and going around during that time for some other events, and then obviously I paid for the trip myself, and I got to meet my foreign rights.
Obviously.
I mean,
Not
I paid.
obvious, but
Well, yeah, no,
yeah.
I did, just make that stop myself, and I met up with my foreign rights agent, my London agent, my UK publisher. I did meet. I went to the London Book Fair to talk with my Spanish publisher, and I met up with my Japanese publisher as well. So I I was. I mean, I didn't need to do that, I
No, but
suppose,
it's
but
really nice. It's great, but yeah.
yeah, I felt it was kind of like while I was there, I felt I wanted to make the effort to set up the meetings and meet the people. I kind of like I bought gifts. I love gifts. I love giving gifts. So I got some like book
Always a good
gifts
idea. Always a good idea. Yeah.
for my like UK editorial team and my foreign rights agent. Um, and then when I did stop by New York, where my family is, when I did stop by New York later, I also met up with my agent and of course the publisher. So I did meet up with all of those people. Um, and there are a couple of people I haven't met, but
Okay, so flash forward then the book is out and how did you navigate a book tour from Shanghai?
yeah, I was really, really lucky because my US publisher um, was willing to fund a book tour. And so I had a like 5 cities, I think, tour over the course of 1 week, I believe, 1.5 weeks in the US. And so they were able to cover like hotels and uh, things like that and flights. And so I did get to come over and meet some readers. I don't know if I don't know if I'll do it again. I don't know how I don't know how necessary a book tour is, because in some stops that it was like a fully attended event. And I remember there was one where it was a little bit sparse. And so,
Yeah.
it's it's not like a book tour is always going to kind of like be
No. But
worthwhile, but it was
it's
a really lovely experience for this book.
it's important to meet the booksellers and people
Yeah.
and I don't know. I assume you did a lot of virtual events, which I can only imagine you were up at 2 o'clock in the morning for those from Shanghai.
Yeah, a few of those and some like
Yeah,
podcast things. Yeah.
yeah.
But and then I did, my London publisher was always kind of clear that they would plan and support and um help with accommodation if I got myself to London. So I did end up taking myself to London, and then they did also help um set up events in London, and then they did set me up with accommodation for around those events. So it was
So it was
kind of
all
like a
in
half
London. They
half.
didn't take you outside of the city?
Yeah, it was London and Manchester, and then I mean it was just a few days,
Mm.
and I just tagged that onto the end of my US book tour because they were so close in date, in release date. I was able to do that, so I didn't have to make like 2 trips from Shanghai, which was
Right,
nice.
right. Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah, so there
Um,
was some investment on my end, and like I said, it was worthwhile for me because my first book, wanted to have that
yeah.
experience, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I think it's the best part of publishing a book. I mean, it's nice to have written it. It's really great to see it out
mhm,
there, but the best part I always find is going around and meeting people in person. I don't think that the virtual book tour accomplishes the same purpose at all. And a lot of people go to and listen to you talk virtually and then they never buy the book, which,
mhm.
it's hard for them to do that in a bookstore when you're standing there. It's not impossible, but it's harder for them to do that.
Yeah.
So my last question, there you are in China, and this is a book about Shanghai, and is it going to come out in Chinese? Are there Chinese rights?
Yeah, I think most likely not. I s- there was I do remember at the London Book Fair that first time I did meet up with a publisher from Shanghai, and they, sent me their card and they were interested, but yeah, it didn't work out. I think that in most cases, if there is a country interested, my foreign rights agent would let me know and we would pursue something, but um because generally it's better to have something than nothing. So I don't think anything would have been like outright rejected. I think it's a difficult book because
Mhm.
um not because it's controversial or anything, but
Yeah.
there are some, for example, like, I guess, like sexy scenes that might not be so
Oh,
appetizing and to some
yeah.
people. And yeah, it's so I don't know what the reason is exactly. I don't
Mm.
know for any country. You never really know
Mhm.
like why one country is interested and why one country like why is like there an Arabic version, but there's no Chinese version, and why
Is
is
there a
there
Korean version?
yeah, there's no Korean version, and I
Uh,
would absolutely love for there to be a Korean version. And
yeah.
I recently, now that the book's been out for a year plus, um, there's a lot of energy in the beginning around sales, and
Mhm.
there's like a kind of self perpetuating momentum
Mhm.
with deals in the very beginning, but now it's kind of, it's out in the world, it's done its thing for a while. So I did recently like ping my foreign rights agent and be like, still love a Korean deal if possible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we'll see.
You never
You never
know.
know.
I mean,
You
maybe
never
there'll
know.
be some big zeitgeist thing about telling stories backwards, and then you'll be ready to spring through.
How about you? Was there
Oh,
like a country that you felt you really wanted to be published in and you got that or didn't get that or
um, I've only had one of my books published in China, and that was a long time ago. So I think China's a tough nut to crack,
it is?
for a whole bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
Uh, but it must be kind of difficult to live there and not have any access to it. So I feel you. But
Yeah.
we're practically up to an hour here,
Okay.
and I'm really delighted that everybody has joined us. All of you, I see your names on the chat. So thank you for tuning in. And Julie, this has been great. You have been a cornucopia of information. And we will get the transcript and the video out, and I will collect all of the highlights for people, and it will be published Saturday morning at MFA Lore. And so anybody who tuned in late and wants to catch up on all of this wealth of information about foreign rights sales and how you get a book out and how you get an agent and international releases and everything. This has really, really been a terrific conversation. So I want
Thank
to
you so
thank you,
much.
Julie.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you so much, Aimee, for your brilliant questions and your hospitality. Yeah, it's been a great
Been really wonderful. Thank you so much. And Julie, have a good day.
have a great evening.
Okay.
Yeah,
Bye bye.
see you soon. Bye.